Good afternoon, everybody. Adrian García, your host on For Your Information, para su información. And usually I am joined by my big brother, Bernardo Garcia. Regretfully, he is just snowed in, not by the weather, but by work. And he could not join us today, but he is watching us. So give Bernardo a shout out. But we're so excited to be here once again, bringing you important information about all the incredible things that are happening in our nation, in our state, in our county, and in our city. And today we're joined by Jaime González with the Katy Prairie Conservancy. Now, Jaime has got a fancy title. What is that title, Jaime?
I'm the Community Conservation Director.
Community Conservation Director. Now, what does that mean?
What it means is that as an organization, the Katy Prairie Conservancy wants to reach out into the community and help people where they are. So we preserve a wonderful place in western Harris County and in Waller County. It's about 21,000 acres called the Katy Prairie Preserve. But we also work with a bunch of partners in the city to make sure that folks have access to nature, to make sure that we're part of the flooding solution, and to work with community members to build a better Houston. In a lot of ways, I think of us as a quality of life institution as much as a conservation agency.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, before we get too far along, give folks a Twitter handle, a Facebook page where they can reach you and get in touch with you, support your efforts, participate in your efforts, and learn more about what you're doing.
We'd love for you guys to follow us on social media. We have a lot of different social media platforms. On Twitter, it's at Katy Prairie. On Facebook, if you just type in Katy Prairie, we're going to be the first thing that comes up. We have a great YouTube channel, so if you want to see some video content, if you just type in YouTube Katy Prairie, there's things there. And Instagram, one of the best ways of seeing what we're up to and some of the magnificent wildlife and landscapes of our region is at our Instagram account. So please check us out there.
Wonderful. Now, Jaime, you said something that's very important. You're working with folks to address flooding. Now, it's interesting. I have met a lot of folks who are obviously interested in preserving wildlife and preserving natural space and those habitats that come with it. But rarely have I heard where a conservancy, a preserve like yourself, says that we're also a partner in addressing some of the broader issues that are sometimes caused by development. So talk about your work with the Harris County Flood Control District, as you mentioned earlier.
Sure. So, one of the things that we're very aware of is nature provides a lot of benefits, not just to wildlife, but to people. And so one of the things, we're doing a couple things with our partners at Harris County Flood Control. One thing is that we're participating in a 5-year study to see how different landscapes absorb water differently. So we're doing a 5-year research project with them. And the hope is that once we have a better feeling for which landscapes, like prairie landscapes, absorb more water, that in essence what we can do is restore pieces of our preserve, but also restore other parts of the county and the region so that we can use the land, which is this very ancient thing, to meet a very modern problem, which is flooding in Houston. We're also working with Harris County Flood Control on something called the Cypress Creek Overflow Plan. So as you know, water rolls downhill in Houston. And our creeks and bayous, many of them originate to the northwest of the city on the Katy Prairie, where water starts to roll towards the city. So we want to be a part of a solution for localized flooding in western Harris County and work with developers and work with Harris County Flood Control to devise a new system for holding millions of gallons of water back using our preserve system and some other adjoining lands. So
that is so good.
We have people who live in Houston. I live in Houston. I don't like to get flooded, and so that's what we're trying to do.
Well, I know that there's a lot of families who regretfully have been victims of flooding, who really do appreciate this important news, because we always think about flooding as being the responsibility of the Flood Control District and the City of Houston's Public Works Departments and the respective municipalities. But to have a conservancy to be an integral partner in flood control is really interesting. That's pretty dynamic. That's thinking outside the box, I'd say.
Well, we appreciate that, and I think that the conservation community has recognized that although we love the wildlife, we love the biodiversity. I'm a biologist. that really nature protection has to have people at the center. And it's got to meet their needs as well as the needs of wildlife. And so we're trying to find as many great uses for nature as we can for people. So we're just trying to forward that work in a variety of ways, one of which is recently there's been a whole ream of information coming out about how nature impacts how we feel about ourselves, the amount of stress we have. So one of the things we're doing is we're helping to build nature back into the city. We have a program where we build pocket prairies with our partners, our wonderful partners like MD Anderson Cancer Center and Herman Park and other folks back into the city so that people don't have to drive all the way to the Katy Prairie Preserve every day. They can get it every day where they live.
And you know, and I was looking at the map that you shared with me, and the historical boundary, if you will, of the Conservancy is huge. And I didn't realize that it goes that close into the city. You would think that because of your name that you're restricted or just solely on the west side and solely around the Katy area, but you have a huge boundary.
Yeah, so I mean the original boundary of the Katy Prairie went almost to the Galleria on the east, went all the way to the Brazos River on the west, and then it went up to 290 and down to I-10. It's a massive area. And the Katy Prairie, frankly, was part of a much larger prairie ecosystem called the coastal prairie of Texas and Louisiana. When the settlers first got here, about 75% of what we think about as Houston was a prairie, a grassland. It's no wonder that we had such a rich cattle culture here with all that grass. And it's a thing that basically gave rise to a lot of the things we think about Texas being. Cowboys, barbecue, the rodeo, all those things came from that prairie ecosystem. So when we save the prairie, we're not just saving it for wildlife and for the benefit of people flooding. We're saving a piece of who we are as a community, we believe, and that's really an important piece.
That's good. You know, now I was reading some of the material about the Conservancy and the work that you do. Now, you work hard to make sure that our young people are well informed and educated, and you have something called a virtual wildlife. Is that?
Yeah, actually,
virtually wildlife.
You got it. So basically, what we understand working with a bunch of schools and hospitals as well is that transportation dollars are really limited in a lot of those institutions, or kids at hospitals cannot get outside because their immune systems are compromised and they're just simply too sick to even leave their bed. So a couple of years back, we pioneered a program with our partners at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Houston Partnership to bring live broadcasts from the field to school kids and to kids in hospitals. And so we go out to a wild place, we look at alligators, talk to a biologist, take a little adventure, all live, streamed right into these hospitals and these schools. And we've had a really great response from that. In fact, this year we're going to go statewide with that program, so we're very excited.
Nice. Now, I think one of your partners is MD Anderson?
Yeah, so several years back, the wonderful folks at MD Anderson Cancer Center took a building down, the Houston main building right there at Holcomb and Fannin, and they had to decide what they were going to do with that plot of land. They knew they were going to build on it immediately. And so we talked with them along with other folks, and they decided to take a step into the dark, which was to, instead of put it all in lawn, is to create a prairie that might have been reminiscent of the prairie that was once the medical center at the corner of Holcomb and Fannin. And now it's one of the most beautiful alive spots in the middle of the city. It's called the MD Anderson Prairie, and we have a great working relationship with those folks.
Wonderful.
And we also teach their kids at their charter school through the Virtually Wild program.
Awesome. Now, once again, I know people are going to be interested and curious on how to get more involved and how to help your efforts. And I imagine you take private contributions as well. Definitely. And so tell folks how to reach you.
Okay, so in order to reach us, the best way is if you visit our website. It tells you a lot about who we are at katyprairie.org. You can also email us at info@katyprairie.org, and someone will answer your email very quickly. If you want to call us, it's 713-523-6135. And there's lots of things you can do to help the Katy Prairie and just nature in general in the Houston area One program that we have is called the Great Grow Out. And this is a real interesting program where people get seeds at their home. They grow plants up at their home, and then those plants get brought back to us, and we either give them to a school, a local park, or they get planted on our preserve system. Like you said, private donations are always very welcome to support the vital work of the Conservancy. And we have lots of volunteer and family-oriented opportunities on our preserve system. So if you ever want to go out and have a big Texas-sized adventure close to home, visit us at the Katy Prairie.
Good deal. Man, you're doing some pretty cool things there. As my daughter would say, your cool points have gone up, Jaime. So keep up the good work.
I can use them. I can use every cool point I can get.
Well, you're doing it. But, the work of the Conservancy, as we were sharing before we went on the air, was that sometimes there's a bit of a conflict between development and protecting and preserving the natural environment. But you found a way to do some coexisting, if you will, between what is the reality of our community. Houston is a extremely populated area, largest city in Texas, third largest now in America. And obviously development and the changing of the landscape is all a part of that change. But, and you talked about your relationship and your work to work with developers. Talk about how you've been able to find that common ground that's important for you and important for the developers that are working around our city.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we always say is that we're not anti-development, which is a little bit different than some conservation groups, and we respect them as well. What we want to usually say is there are some very special places that deserve special protection, like the Katy Prairie, and other places like the Columbia Bottomlands and parts of Bolivar and those kinds of things. We should work as a community to save those. And that's because creative kids, and I'm saying kids like college students, once they get out of college, they want to move to a place that's vibrant in the outdoors. And we still have a vibrancy to our outdoors here, so we don't want to see all that developed. On the other hand, we understand economics and the growth patterns of Houston are going to continue. So we're really encouraged to work with a variety of partners at HGAC and other organizations to try to think about what are some of the best places to save, how do we get there, and how do we work together as a community, because I think that's the only way it's going to happen in the future.
Exactly. Well, and I appreciate your practical approach to both the changes that are going to happen and they're extremely difficult to stop, but at the same time, how you create that partnership to preserve something that is critical and vital to our ecosystem, as you often refer to it. So, and that's important to have, I think. Now, in terms of the work of the Conservancy and what someone can find when they go out there, give us a little bit of a virtual tour, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great idea. So if you go out to the Katy Prairie Preserve, the first thing is to expect the unexpected. I can't tell you what you're going to see when you go out to the Katy Prairie because every day is very different. It's a very wide open space. So if you think about big Texas skies and wildflowers and that kind of Texan iconography, that's what you're going to see. You're going to get in touch with Houston's history. You're probably going to see some magnificent wildlife. So it depends on when you're going to go out there. If you go out there in the wintertime, very likely you might see something like a bald eagle or a flock of 6,000 ducks, because we have lots of room for them to be. If you go out in the summertime like now, lots of wildflowers and dragonflies and butterflies and that kind of thing. Also, you're going to see a lot of working lands. So you're going to see active cattle ranches. So we have a wonderful cattle ranch called the Warren Ranch. It's 6,500 acres. It's the biggest cattle ranch still in Harris County. And we're actually starting to sell grass-fed beef every week from that ranch. And you can find out more information about that at our website, katyprairie.org, or at warrenranchtx.com. So I think that if you go out to the Katy Prairie, expect bigness.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, that's all right.
No, so continue. You're talking about, I was really intrigued by that you're working to do some of the grass-fed beef.
Yeah.
That means hamburgers and ribs, right?
Exactly.
A little bit of barbecue there.
We are going to grill out at my house tomorrow on some Warren Ranch beef.
All right.
Make some hamburgers. In a lot of ways, what we're trying to do, and we're working with National Audubon on a concept called bird-friendly beef. What that means is that as we treat the land well, as we redevelop the prairie in better ways to bring it back to its natural balance, it serves the cattle super well, but it also serves the birds really well and the other wildlife. So we always are looking for the added value, right? Not the either or, but the added value. And then we know that if we manage our cattle properly, it'll serve the birds that we treasure so much. And it also gets local food back to a community that is really hungry for local food in a very literal sense.
As you're talking, you remind me of an old school poem that was what was it? The woman who swallowed a fly, who swallowed something else, and it just goes on and on.
Yeah.
It's actually an ecosystem that you're talking about. How the cattle are attached to the birds, how the birds are attached to the butterflies, and it just goes on, and it's so important for people to understand this and appreciate it. I was always honored to have the support of the Sierra Club over my years while in office. But the idea of educating and creating an awareness of how important it all is. I was talking to a young man who is working hard to protect the bee environment.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because there's incredible changes occurring in that regard. But all of this is tied together. There's just not one part of it. I mean, think of our national bird, the bald eagle. Imagine what kind of nation we would be if we didn't create those opportunities to give them a natural setting for their life and their continued presence.
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head, Adrian. There is this beautiful and very ancient interconnection between people and nature. We came from nature. It feeds us emotionally. It feeds us physically. It clothes us. And so what we're trying to do is to point out to Houstonians by both action and by word just how intimate and important that relationship is, especially at a time when we've gone so digital. And I use digital media a lot. I understand that. But we're starting to see the effects, some of the negative effects of being so connected digitally all the time. So nature has a really important role to play. We haven't grown out of nature. We actually need it more than ever.
Yes.
And so we're really working hard to reconnect people to this beautiful, wondrous, mysterious thing called nature every day at the Conservancy.
And that's so critical. I mean, you're right. I mean, we take it for granted. Our laptops can just consume us, our TVs, our iPhones. I mean, they can just really have us sit down more indoors than outdoors.
Yeah.
But we need to make sure that we don't forget that if we neglect our natural space, that it could really create an adverse effect to our overall existence.
Yeah, I mean, I think, let me give you a couple statistics real quick. We're very heavily involved in what's called the Texas Children of Nature movement, an effort to get kids outside. And here's why. Here's the stat that your listeners probably are going to be horrified by. The average Texan child is in front of a screen for about 7 hours a day and gets outdoors for unstructured playtime for about 7 minutes.
Wow.
So that is a stunning finding that came out several years ago. And what it points to is a little bit of a life out of balance. We think that computers and technology, great, in part of a balanced life, it works out well. But what we're finding is that kids today are having vitamin D deficiency because they're literally not getting enough sun on their skin to manufacture vitamin D. They're having eyesight problems from being on screens too much. And they're also just stressed out more than they might be if they went out into nature. And so what we want to do is say, look, nature is something critical. It's important. It's a part of who we are. It's literally in our DNA. let's get kids outside, let's get adults outside for a healthier and happier and smarter life.
Amen. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember where I could make a day of kicking a can around the backyard or
Right.
or running with my dog, and and it's so important that that our young people and the next generation realizes that the outdoors is so critical to a healthy life. I remember going out and camping with my family. When I was younger, and I miss that so much. I really regret that I didn't do more of it. But it's so important to realize that here in our own backyard, we have folks like yourself, Jaime, and others. I imagine there's, how big is the team at the Conservancy?
About 8 full-time and about 4 part-time.
And so I really appreciate, we all applaud your important work. One more time, tell folks how they can get in touch with the Conservancy, how they can participate, how they can take advantage of the tours and all of the amenities that you provide, but more importantly, how they can support you.
Absolutely. So getting in contact with us is super easy. If you just go to katieprairie.org, we're going to have all the information that you need there to come and visit us on the Katy Prairie Preserve, to learn about how we're impacting the city and the suburbs in a positive way. And to sign up for events. So, we have things called Unplugged Adventures, which are family-friendly adventures that happen throughout the year, once a month. But we have other tours. We have times where you can go out to our wildlife viewing platform. We got a lot of stuff. So go to katieprairie.org. And then, if you want, sign up for our mailing list. And you get just one mailing a month. It tells you everything that's happening there. Also gives you information about grass-fed beef and where you can get that and how you can get your hands on that. If you go on social media, just check us out at Katy Prairie on Twitter, and just type in Katy Prairie in the search box on Facebook, and you can find us there. And just check out and be amazed at the amazing photography that happens on the Katy Prairie on Instagram. So if you do any of those things, or email info@katieprairie.org, we'll be very happy to get you in contact with something memorable. So I want to pick up on something that you said, Adrian, earlier. You said, I remember. One of the things about being connected to the Katy Prairie, to nature, to the beach, to the outdoors, is it creates a memorable life. I'm kind of afraid that what we're going to have is a bunch of 80-year-olds in several decades sitting on a porch and trying to remember what they did as children. Are they going to say, I remember when I got to level 7 of Death Slayers Part 7, The Revenge? I mean, is that the kind of memories that we want to leave them with? Or are they going to say, man, I remember that time I went fishing and I caught a shark in Galveston, or I went camping, or I did this, or I did that. So let's make memories together. Just visit us at katieprairie.org.
Good point. Good point. And I tell you that the outdoors is a phenomenal experience, and it is a phenomenal opportunity to make some incredible memories with your family, with your children. And I got to go back to something and just applaud once again the efforts of the Conservancy, especially working with the hospitals. I've visited MD Anderson on many occasions, Texas Children as well, especially during the holiday season, where some of these young children who are putting up some incredible and courageous battles against some tough illnesses, they're there alone. Their families sometimes can't afford to be with them every day of the year. Some of them are coming from different parts of the world. But to have the Conservancy as an integral partner to our hospital system here in the Houston area, especially where you're paying attention to the young people in the hospitals, that is incredibly noteworthy and commendable, and I applaud you, because not a whole lot of organizations think that way, Jaime. So please give my regards to everyone at the Conservancy for thinking that way and for including those young people, because they may not be able to go outside, but that doesn't mean that you can't bring the outdoors inside.
You got it. And we're going to do the best we can to get them connected with something that is super amazing and very enjoyable and just spurs the imagination like nothing else, which is nature. And we're going to continue to do that because we see ourselves as members of the community. We think of Houstonians kind of broadly. It's both the people who live in Houston and the wildlife. They're the original Houstonians. And so being a member of a community, accepting that responsibility means that we have to reach out and touch people where we can in our work.
And if there's a lot of friends on my Facebook account, my Twitter account, that have been incredible philanthropists. They've done some great stuff in our community. They're always there to help on an important cause. But I would venture to say that there's not a more important cause than doing everything we can to preserve our outdoors, our natural spaces, natural environments, and our wildlife, the habitats of our wildlife. So if there's someone out there that may be itching to write a nice big check, can they do it online? Can they?
Yeah. So we take payment online. If you want to donate online, you can always contact our office at info@katieprairie.org. If you want to learn more about us or take a donor tour or just to go experience it and see, is this something that really lines up with my values, with what I'd like to spend my precious treasure on? Come see us. That's always the best way. I wouldn't buy very many things sight unseen. So if you come out and visit the Katy Prairie, we know the product is great, and you'll be encouraged to donate. But also know that your gift will go into the community where people live and have positive benefits too. So it's not just restricted to the wonderful Katy Prairie Preserve. It goes throughout the community. And we're a really tight ship at Katy Prairie, so your money goes a long way.
Good deal. Good deal. So there you have it, folks. Another incredible segment here on For Your Information, para su información. And I want to thank Jaime González once again for joining us.
Thank you.
And sharing all of their great work over the Conservancy. I want to thank my brother Bernardo in particular, because he's the one that found Jaime, invited him on the show. So folks, stay tuned. Once again, in fact, next week, if all things remain the same, we're going to be joined by an incredible human being who's got a phenomenal life story. This young man, as I like to refer to him, made an incredible journey from Cuba all the way to Miami, and then from Miami to Houston. And he's been an incredible treasure of ours here in the Houston area. That's going to be Dr. Jesus Mayor. And so we're looking forward to having him next week and telling us his story. So please stay tuned for next week's segment of Para su Información, For Your Information segment. But once again, folks, join us. Send in your remarks, your questions, and let us know what else should be a part of this segment. So once again, it's Adrian Garcia. Honored to be your host this week. Giving shout out to my big brother, Bernardo. Couldn't join us. He missed a good one, but we'll see him next time. Take care.